Hello, everybody. My name's Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hey, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples about how small, emerging, or challenger consumer packaged goods brands, CPG, can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business through to the consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if you've reached that point. The bottom line is Tracy and I have been in this business a long time. We've made a lot of mistakes, and anything we can do to help you be more successful by highlighting the many important aspects along this journey, we would love to. Trace?
Yes, so Bruce and I have been in commercial operations for 30 plus years, so we have a lot of experience, as Bruce said. And what we mean by commercial operations is sales, marketing, trade marketing, divestitures, acquisitions, managing distributors, managing brokers. So we've done a lot in our careers. And again, the purpose here is to share those insights and experiences with our audience on our Road to Retail podcast. From time to time, we also have guests on, colleagues and friends in the industry that share their experiences so our audience can really get some, down and dirty, real world experience and get those shared with our audience today. And today we have a very special guest. So Bruce, would you like to go ahead and introduce Rebecca?
Absolutely. Today we have Rebecca Styn, a new friend of the show, the founder of Blind Tiger Spirit-Free Cocktails. And when we were asking a couple of industry colleagues who we should talk to, Joe Tarnowski from Range Me ECRM said, I've got the perfect woman for you to talk to. Her story's unbelievable. So Rebecca, welcome to the show. And we really appreciate your time. And I know that the folks watching are going to get a lot out of this. Why don't you give us a little bit about your personal background before we dive into Blind Tiger?
Sure. So Bruce and Tracy, thank you for having me as well. All right. So my background is pretty varied. I started out, if we're fast forwarding, let's go post teenage years. I started out as a music major in college. I was a piano major, and I decided halfway through I didn't really want to spend 10 hours in a practice room every day, but I finished the degree out, thought I would go and run a nonprofit organization, particularly a symphony. That didn't really pan out, but I did get in the nonprofit world for quite some time, got into public service, and ran for political office twice during that time. And I lost twice during that time too, although I was really close the second time.
Well, however, that just means you've been able to do something productive with your career.
Right. Yeah. But so post that is really kind of what launched the direction of where I ended up today. Because when I ran for office, one of my pillars was to invest in our downtown. I kind of wanted to put my money where my mouth was. And I decided to open up a speakeasy style restaurant called Room 33. And Room 33 was really the impetus for Blind Tiger, albeit probably close to 4 years later, because it's been around 5 years now, 5.5 years. So I opened Room 33 in 2017, and we became really known for our craft cocktails. And it was a great business model. It still is a great business model. It's still live, so it's still doing really well. And then fast forward and COVID hits. And I don't know if you want me to go ahead and expand into that, or how you guys want to.
Go ahead and share. Absolutely. Okay. Share your story. Sure.
Okay.
Please.
Great. So COVID hits in 2020, and we're mandated to takeout only. But at the time in Pennsylvania, you were not legally allowed to sell alcohol to go. But as I mentioned, we had really become known for our craft cocktails. So 90% of our sales were bar sales. And as such, we really had to come up with some alternative ideas. And one of those was bottling non-alcoholic versions of our classic drinks. And the response was really overwhelming. And honestly, you guys, I just woke up one day because I'm insane and decided, I wonder if I can't bring this to market. And that's where Blind Tiger was born.
Well, that's a great story. And it's amazing what you can do when you really have to, right? So you were basically confronted with shut or evolve, and you evolved. So Rebecca, being the owner and founder of Blind Tiger, once you had this idea, what gave you the push aside from COVID? And I guess you kind of had no choice, but what gave you that push to go for it? And then maybe as COVID started to wane a little bit, what gap did you see in the marketplace that led you to believe, hey, this is more than a COVID patch job? There might be a business here.
Yeah, honestly, I probably determined the gap before I even went for it. So although I wanted to bring it to market, I wanted to know there was a market that I was going to bring it to. So I started doing a ton of research, found out that, over 30% of the population doesn't drink for a variety of reasons. And these are people that don't drink ever. And so that doesn't include, women who are pregnant or those who are designated drivers or just those who just don't feel like it, like me on occasion, not all the time, but on occasion. And so that told me that I had a good idea, but where I didn't know whether or not how fast it would move, if it would move, what happened was I had put all my money into the speakeasy. So I didn't really have a ton of money to go forward with this concept. I did little pieces here and there, but then there is an organization called Ben Franklin Technology Partners, and it's a statewide organization, and they provide support and financial support to entrepreneurs mainly in the manufacturing and technology arena. And they have what's called the Big Idea competition once a year. In this particular competition, you can win $50,000 as the grand prize, and it's a grant, no strings attached. And that had started in November of 2020 that year. So I went after it, not thinking there was any way in hell I was going to get it. And then miraculously, I ended up winning it. So
congratulations. That's awesome.
thank you. Yeah, because of that, I had the money and I felt like, okay, this is the path I need to go forward in.
Nice. Kind of like, you're from Pennsylvania as well. Kind of like the female Rocky Balboa. You took your shot and you came out there. Tracy?
Bruce, really quick as a sidearm.
Please.
I have a dog, or my dog's name is Adrian, and my license plate says Yo Adrian on it. So
I love it.
Big Rocky fan. So.
Big Rocky fans. I love it.
Who isn't?
Of course, the underdog always. So Rebecca, for our audience today, tell us a little bit about what's the best advice you would give a new small emerging brand. Obviously, you went for it and it worked out well for you, but along the way, what's the best advice you'd give a small emerging brand thinking about where you were, back when you started?
One of the things, and I still wish this for myself more often than not, is finding a really good mentor in the space. So even though I ended up winning that competition, which was wonderful, the food and beverage arena was new to them. It did launch a whole sector and with Ben Franklin, and now they do more that's tied to it. But, Pennsylvania isn't really known for beverage startups. It's not your California. So I had a lot to learn. So you don't know what you don't know. And I made a lot of costly mistakes along the way. And I think having a mentor that was in the arena would probably have helped kind of navigate that better for me.
Awesome.
Interesting. So in terms of now that you've been at this a while, if you were following your advice to someone who sought you out and you said, well, I'd love to help you, but I'm not perfect, where do you look for a mentor?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I looked on LinkedIn a lot. And actually I know it seems so simplistic in nature, but, I just started looking for those that were in the beverage arena. And moreover, looking for consultants. And again, I didn't have any contacts in that arena at all. So it was a lot of trial and error. I couldn't go to somebody at that time and say, what do you think of this person? Should I connect with them? Should I pay them, $3,000 a month when you're just starting up because you don't have any idea? So I did a lot of that. And then I started reaching out to other beverage founders. I know we're in a competitive space, so to speak, but I think a rising tide lifts all ships. And that's kind of my philosophy, that there's room for all of us. And I think that we can all learn from each other. So not everybody was responsive, but some of them were. And there was, a few key ones that kind of would throw ideas at me, often that they had already been through. And they were helpful to me in the process.
Oh, good.
That's awesome that people, that are competitors would be willing to help you. And I think that does speak to, specifically the natural products industry, that we're all trying to, help each other.
Yeah.
Well, and
absolutely.
it also shows that all entrepreneurs recognize someone else who has a little bit of a screw loose and is a dreamer. So why not try to help them? So Rebecca, as you continue down the journey here, what signals were you looking for in terms of saying, hey, you know what? I kind of have my groove down now. I think I'm ready to possibly try to get into distribution somewhere. What made you think you were ready, and what were those first couple of steps you took?
So one of the very first steps I took was I did a Kickstarter campaign. And in a previous lifetime, I actually ran something that was called Quickstarter, and it would help other entrepreneurs navigate the Kickstarter arena. So I had some background knowledge in it, kind of like what you really wanted to do and focus on in that. Because of that, I was able to at least that was kind of my sample test, right? To kind of see who people could try it, they could provide their feedback. We ended up getting, I mean, it was a low amount. It was only like 5,000 I had gone for, but we were 270% funded, which was great. And with Kickstarter, you don't get the money unless you're 100% funded to begin with. But then I worked from that demographic, and it was outside of Pennsylvania, which is what I wanted to. I wanted to make sure that we were targeting individuals that were around the country. And so those individuals, they wanted to reorder. I mean, not every one of them came back to me, but I had enough to make me think, okay, maybe now I can kind of see and get a feel for where exactly I should go. But the interesting thing is, you know, there's on-premise and there's off-premise, and then there, you know, retail and distribution. And even then I still had no idea. And I still think I'm finally figuring out where I'm supposed to be, but this is like 2.5 years later. And for all I know, that could pivot completely in the next year or two. So, but that was really a fundamental to launch, was the Kickstarter.
So you did really your own kind of consumer down and dirty consumer research, while also you know, crowdfunding, which is a great idea. So for our listeners, you know, today, take note of that. I think that's a great idea. You are really measuring the level of interest as well as raising money all at the same time. Brilliant, brilliant. Well done. So another question we have is, and you mentioned mistakes. So share with our audience a mistake or two that you wish you could, that you made, and you're like, I wish I had a redo, wish I had a mulligan.
What day of the week is it? I feel like I have so many that I don't even know where to start. One of the biggest ones that I made, and again, Pennsylvania, not really known for its beverage arena, outside of like wine and beer, right? Like these particular products.
Sure.
So the first thing we did completely wrong was our labels. We had our particular product is a hot fill, and we printed labels that weren't up to a temperature that would wrap and look nice. So we did, like, you know, 2 pallets of product with labels that ended up coming out really wrinkly and bad looking. And actually these bottles also went to our Kickstarter because I had to fulfill the product. So that was like a really costly mistake. And you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And even like the printer we were working with, which was a local person, they were great. They had never realized this before either, because they had just worked with wine and beer, which is a completely different fill.
Right.
So that's just one example of mistakes that I've made.
So you've just kind of been finding your way, so to speak, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and I'm a perfectionist, and I would probably gather most entrepreneurs to some degree are too, right? So when I'm playing quality control, you know, you're playing production, you're playing operations, and trying to navigate it all as a, you know, essentially a one founder team at the beginning was really, really hard.
Solo entrepreneur trying to find, you know, their way. So absolutely, totally understand that.
So Rebecca, it sounds like aside from Kickstarter, you know, you have a little bit of experience raising some money. So if you're comfortable sharing, if you're in the process of trying to raise more, or if you're starting to think about it, can help us understand kind of what's running through your mind, because I'm sure there's a lot of other people that have either they've taken it and had some regrets, or they're thinking about taking it and don't know where to start, or maybe they've, you know, sent out some documents and waiting for responses. So whatever the depth of your experience or readiness is, I'm sure it would be very interesting for people to hear your side of the story.
So to date, we haven't gotten any actual venture funds. We've gotten some angel investment. We've gotten some grant dollars, and then obviously the Kickstarter, and then I've done loans as well. But the angel investment didn't come until recently. Obviously, they want to have some traction. They want to make sure you actually have some revenue before, and they're gonna. The thing that I hear over and over and over again from any group that I'm talking to is they really have to believe in the founder of the product, moreover than having a ton of money to back it up. And that was, I think that's key for anybody listening to know that they're really going to take a hard look at you sometimes more than they are looking at the data. And aside from that, I do believe there's a ton of opportunities in individual cities and states that I think that most people don't even know about from grant fundings, whether it's through city or community or county. There's a lot of things that are looking to support entrepreneurs. And I pursued that every angle I could. They were often smaller in nature, 5 to 10,000, but every little bit is amazingly helpful.
Sure.
And then accelerators are huge. I keep trying to get into this one particular accelerator and I have not made it in yet because they want to see more traction financially, which I understand. But then I also know if I had the right mentorship and everything, I would have the traction. So it's kind of like the chicken or the egg. And but if you have the opportunity to do that, I participated in one called Expert Dojo, which is out on the West Coast. And they were phenomenal to work with. They give you some investment, but then they come back and you spend like 2 months with them. It's a pretty intensive accelerator, but it really makes you think differently. I know there's a lot of people that do this constantly. They just hop from one accelerator to another. And I think it's really time intensive and very mentally exhausting. And I don't recommend that.
Right.
But I definitely think getting involved in one or two, if there's an opportunity to pursue it, that's something else I would encourage looking.
That's really great, great advice. And we've had other investment folks on our podcast, and they've said the same thing, that they really look a lot at the entrepreneur and at the brand founder before they invest. So that just confirms it.
The other thing, Rebecca, that we've heard and interested in your perspective before we get off this topic is, and I realize, you have your hands full doing a little bit of everything, if not everything of everything right now. But as you get a bit maybe more discerning about who you might look for in an investor, are you looking for someone with beverage experience or someone that's in Pennsylvania, so they're kind of proximal to you? What's the profile of your ideal investor? And let's not even worry about what the size of the check might be.
Yeah, ideally to me, it's somebody who has beverage experience, but that's because that's a huge gap for me. So, I think it's dependent upon your gap. Is your gap in marketing? Is your gap in legal? Is your gap, where
sales?
Is really sale, where are you really missing? Yeah. And that would be, critical to me, both from a connection and a mentorship standpoint.
Excellent. Tracy?
Yep. So we've talked about mistakes. Tell us about your greatest success with Blind Tiger so far. What are you most proud of?
Oh gosh. I'm most proud that I'm still alive. I get up every day and still work on it.
You're still breathing and still walking.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's half joking. It does get taxing sometimes, to continue to pursue something like this. But honestly, everything to me, I take in stride. So I have a bunch of nice small wins, and those small wins really help fill the gaps for when things are really low and not working out for me. But I don't know if there's anything in particular I'm, wildly excited about or that I find overly successful. I think one day when I can have a team, I'll find that as a success. I've always been a huge proponent of leadership. I did my PhD in it. And I think it's, critical to have a good team that supports and drives you. And I would be one of those founders, much like I was in my restaurant, where I want to be able to empower others to do things, right? And not me just control every little facet of it.
Yeah. I love that you said that really one of your greatest successes while building a team, because you can't do it all yourself. It's as you're telling our audience today, it is very difficult. So I applaud you, because sometimes people have an ego and they say, well, I can do it all, or they're a perfectionist and they're like, well, I can do this a lot easier myself and not have to rely on people. So you've learned that. And I think that's a tremendous goal and an observation and insight on your part, that you really just, you want to get a team around you. And I think that's really important. Right, Bruce?
Yeah. And no way you can be in politics. You have too much ambition to get things done. So you're in the right, you're in the right place, Rebecca. Hey,
You're absolutely
so,
correct there.
so my last question, and it's a little bit different than, mistakes. Tell me about the one thing in your journey so far that you wish you could do over. Like, gosh, I really wish I had done these two things before I did that. So it's not necessarily a mistake. It's kind of an order and sequence of events, or I really wish I had gone to this XYZ retailer within the first 2 weeks of them making contact with me at a trade show. But like, what's the one thing that if you could, rub Aladdin's lamp, that you'd like to do over?
Bruce, for me, that's a really tough question. And the reason that is a tough question for me is I tend to look at the journey as it's gone in the directions it's supposed to, even if it isn't my most ideal outcome. Obviously, I don't know if it would be different if I would have gone to any other retailer up front, right? Or had gone in a different direction, because it's still working with retail and distribution is still really tough. There's a ton of days that I don't get answers. There are a ton of times that I go so far where I get into the system and all the documentation is there, and then I never hear from them again. So it's really, you're relying on other people to kind of respond and get back to you, whereas you can only control the controllables. And even to that degree, you can only control so much of what you want to do. So I kind of just trust the process, right? So even though, like, ideally, I'd love to have known right out of the gate I was supposed to be in retail, or I was supposed to be on premise, like in bars and restaurants. I think that the direction that it's leading me is the direction I ultimately am supposed to be in.
So Rebecca, are you telling me that retailers don't respond to you right away? I don't get that.
Hopefully I'm not the only one, but yes.
Oh, no, that's why I said that tongue in cheek, because that's pretty typical. It takes a lot of perseverance and persistent reaching out to retailers, just because they're all very, very busy and they're managing multiple categories and things like that. So,
and your story is dead on. So many entrepreneurs, it's like, on the one hand, it's good to have a plan. And on the other hand, as soon as the ink is dry, the plan's not worth anything because something's changed. So your choice is try to be a bulldog and go back to your plan, or you say, hey, this is where I am. Now what do we do?
Yes.
But that's a really insightful answer of, you just got to be flexible and keep rolling forward.
Absolutely. And I want to make out one more point too. And I know Bruce will appreciate this, because he and I learned this firsthand when we started Road to Retail. You have to pivot. And it sounds like you've learned that valuable lesson, being you have to pivot, you have to be flexible. And as you said, kind of just go with and trust the process. And you've checked all those boxes. So I commend you for that.
No, it's a nice job and an interesting business. Tracy, I think we're ready for the big finish.
All right, absolutely. So Rebecca, tell our audience how they can reach out to you, because I know retailers and investors are going to just be pouring in after they watch this podcast.
Yes, I can't wait. They can obviously, my website is blindtigerspiritfree.com, and my email is rebecca@blindtigerspiritfree.com. So that's the best way to find me.
Awesome. Excellent. Very good. Very good. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. So the big finish, thanks for joining us today on our episode. Look for this being posted on LinkedIn. We also are have our YouTube channel. We're now on Spotify. We're also on iTunes. And as of this year, we're also on Instagram. So we encourage our audience to follow us on one of those platforms, and look for this insightful podcast coming soon to you on whatever platform you listen to.
Rebecca, thank you once again.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Good luck out there, folks.
Yeah.